ready to go for a climb here. Shouldn't be too bad. Just got done listening to Paul Vanderklay's reaction video to Jordan Peterson, and yeah, I don't know. So what I've been noticing is just that I don't know. And sometimes when Paul reacts like that, I'm like, what were you watching? Because I don't know. To me, just from my from my life experience, a lot of what he said about older females trying to suppress the reproductive rights of the younger girls is kind of something that I've seen, and I think I think in the video, I can't remember all the details, but I think Jordan had a kind of an evolutionary standpoint on it as to like how we see this in nature and primates or something like. I think there was an element of that. But anyways, and I think honestly, what it is I feel like Paul is kind of a fan of feminism. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that, but sometimes like his complaints about what Jordan is pointing at are just like yeah, I don't know. It's just like I've seen it in the lives of a lot of the women that I have been. I've dated a lot of girls and been with a handful. Anyways, but I've seen their relationships with their mothers and other women who influence their lives heavily influence their decisions of what they think they got to do. And I've seen just like men put pressure on other men to be real men. The idea of what the ideal woman has changed and is no longer what it was. It's morphed into something weird and it's just weird. In my opinion, it's weird. It doesn't scale very well. There we go. That's why it's weird. Because, I take my relationship with my love and just the influences of the women in her lives and how they a lot of times end up discouraging and putting pressure on them in particularly hard points in their lives. And like, don't you get pregnant, that was always a big thing, I think, for I don't know, anybody who's like 30, probably 32 through like 40 right now, somewhere in that generation of, and maybe it was always a big thing like going back in the previous generations. But it was like, don't you get pregnant, don't you screw up, don't you do this, you got to be this, you got to be that, and putting a lot of pressure on them, and then the pressure to go to school, and the pressure to find a man, and the pressure to get a career. And I think what Jordan's pointing at is it's the feminine shadow that is trying to morph and form positive femininity. It tends to guide the growth of the organism, but toxic femininity, just like toxic masculinity, it's a very gross effect on what it's influencing. Something that popped up to me is a long time ago I had heard that that's broken. Don't know when that happened. That Plato believed, it was like things that Plato believed, and how he was horribly wrong about certain things. He believed that the womb was actually like like uterus, and that was alive, like it was a live thing. And something I thought about a while back is that do our organs in our body kind of have a separate, I don't know if agency is the right word, but I guess maybe it is, or at least a fractal of that. And this thing, this organ, it's what separates men and women, and it grows, and it produces, and then it begins to die and shut down. And after a while, a woman does not have the ability to reproduce. And I think the women around her become a threat because now all these pretty young girls are now a real problem. They are getting more, they are still beautiful. My looks are fading. I'm having to figure out how to keep the attention of my man off of these ones. And so there's this shadow, I think, that Jordan's very familiar with, which that I think will reach out and try to control and reach out and try to basically do some horrible crap shit. Do some horrible shit. And I've seen men that didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish in their time, and now their energy is draining, and body's getting old, and that I've seen them denigrate the accomplishments of young men around them, because that unconscious is at work, and it's like, hey, this guy's gonna outcompete you. You gotta watch out. This guy's an up and comer, and he's gonna get a lot done where you got nothing done. I guess it's jealousy I'm pointing at, and if I'm completely honest, sometimes, Paul, I feel a little hint of jealousy. It sounds like, because every time Jordan puts out something, I'm like, man, that's just crazy, and I got something to think about, and it's just like all these analyzations and things like that. And then, of course, like, I'm like, oh man, this will be interesting, because I saw Paul put out a video on it, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be crazy, and that to see what see how Paul just oh yeah, it's crap. It's real crap, man. He's just he's off in the woods, and I don't see it, and what he's pointing out, and this is bad preaching. It's like, Jordan Peterson does not a preacher, bro. Quit trying to look at him that way. And not only that, but I mean, I'm Catholic, and so my preaching and my priest is very different from Paul, and I grew up listening to guys similar to Paul, not Paul. Paul's pretty high quality, but there's levels to this game of preaching and talking out loud about true things and all this. But anyways, those are my initial thoughts. I'll tag Paul in the video, and maybe he'll react to it, and we can get something, maybe a conversation started or something. But I don't see Jordan in the same light that you do, and maybe that's because of how I got introduced to him in my mind, and this figure that I'll never probably meet and shake his hand in that. He's probably much different up here than he is in real life, and that's okay. That's, I think, what he's doing. He probably doesn't dress like that, the way he dresses. He probably doesn't dress, didn't, a lot of his style may not even be his actual personality or the things that he likes to wear. Maybe he likes sweatpants and a dirty old shirt, and running around the house and no socks or something. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, because I know that on Sunday, the version of me that people get, greeting the door and doing all this and doing all that, is much different than what you get the rest of the week. When I wear these clothes, I tend to swear a lot more. That's not, well, I don't know how I feel about that, but then I change my clothes, and a lot of things change about me, when I'm walking and that. But anyways, I'm probably getting off track, but it just, sorry, I'm at a customer's house and the dogs are going nuts. I don't even know if you guys can really hear me all that well, but yeah, I think there's a lot of subconscious jealousy and threats to our perceived control, or our perceived ability to control, and that I think a lot of people are a lot more controlling than they realize, or they at least reach for control, which is a reach, I guess, maybe for power, honestly. And we learned from the opening lines of Lord of the Rings, all men seek power, and power over others, power over the land, power over this, power over that, Even look at literal power, energy. All people seek it to, I don't know. Probably getting off. I think Jordan did good with the fairy tales. I listened to Hansel and Gretel a little bit yesterday. I got to re-listen to it because I was in and out the whole day. Probably do that while I'm up climbing. Hearing about the crappy father that was the woodcutter. Yeah, man. Something there. In the Hansel and Gretel story, that is. But back to Snow White. I don't know. I got to listen to Jordan's thing about it again, and there was a lot there, and that. But I don't know. I just wasn't a very big fan of Paul's reaction. I like Paul. I really do. And later my dad found Reformed preaching, and some Reformed guys later on in life, and so I'm very familiar with Paul, and kind of how guys like that view things, and that. There's a lot of difference. Christians, if you float around Christian culture and that, between the Catholics and the Protestants and the thises and the thatses, you see a lot of trends, man. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't align in philosophy and thought with many others, but not with. I mean, Catholics. I mean, they're a very diverse group, especially right now. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to resonate with a lot of groups, and I have my own thoughts on that. But anyways, hey, we'll see if Paul sees this.